Hey everyone, and welcome or welcome back to Brian's Horror Movies for Life YouTube channel. And welcome to this modern horror movie review video as part of my current series. So the movie we're going to take a look at today is one that came out about 4 or 5 years ago. A sequel for it just actually came out last year. Obviously, I haven't seen that yet, but I have the original on DVD, and that movie is from 2021, The Black Phone with Ethan Hawke. I got the collector's edition here. You can see some of the special bonus features on the back there. But yeah, never seen the Black Phone before now, so let's go ahead and talk about it. Get my notes here. So, The Black Phone is a 2021 American supernatural horror film directed by Scott Derrickson from a screenplay he wrote with C. Robert Cargill, based on the 2004 short story by Joe Hill. It is the first installment in the Black Phone franchise. Ooh, I didn't know it was a franchise with two movies. It stars Mason Thames as Finney, a teenage boy abducted by a child killer known colloquially as the Grabber. When Finney encounters a mystical black rotary phone in captivity, he uses it to plot his escape by communicating with the ghost of Grabber's slain victims. Derrickson and Cargill produced the Black Phone in association with Blumhouse Productions CEO Jason Blum. So yes, it is a Blumhouse movie. Um, so the film opens in 1978. A local serial child abductor and murderer, known only as the Grabber, prowls the streets of a suburb in North Denver, Colorado. Finney Blake and his younger sister Gwen live in the area with their abusive alcoholic father, Terrence, whose wife died by suicide after having a series of disturbing psychic dreams. Finney is frequently bullied and harassed at school, but his friend and classmate Robin fends off the bullies. Having inherited her mother's ability, Gwen dreams about the Grabber's abduction of Bruce, a boy Finney knew from Little League. Police detectives Wright and Miller interview Gwen at school, believing she may know the Grabber. When Terrence learns about the questioning, he beats Gwen. Soon afterward, the Grabber abducts Robin and then Finney. Finney awakens in a soundproof basement with a disconnected black rotary dial telephone on one wall. It begins to ring on its own at times. Finney hears only static when he first answers, but then hears Bruce's voice telling him about a floor tile he can remove to dig an escape tunnel. So yeah, that's the setup, the premise, the beginning of the Black Phone from 2021. It was actually, I think this movie was actually released in 2022 because it was delayed with COVID, I think, but it is a 2021 um, movie, I believe. So as far as the cast goes, Mason Thames or Tams, Mason Thames is Finney Blake. Madeline McGraw is Gwen Blake. Ethan Hawke is the Grabber. Jeremy Davies is Terrence Blake. And James Ranson is Max. So that's the setup, the premise, and the cast for the 2021 movie, The Black Phone. Um, so my thoughts on this one. I kind of had to sit on this one for a while because this is another one of those movies that there's a lot of things I really like about it. But ultimately, it did leave me a little bit unsatisfied with what could have been. Um, yeah, I know there's a lot of people that love this movie from a lot of the reviews I've seen. Not all of them, but the majority of the opinion out there is that this is the best thing since sliced bread. And I don't share that opinion, although I do think it's a very good movie. But let's just go ahead and get into it, starting with the things that I do like about the Black Phone. And you've got to start with the setting, not just the small town urban Americana setting in the late 70s, or I'm sorry, but also the time period, the late 70s, is what I really like about this movie. It really worked well for me. I enjoyed the music, the 70s music, as well as the overall aesthetic associated with it for that time. I thought they did a really good job making you believe that it was shot in the 70s. Not just, a lot of movies, they try to be set in a time period in the past and they have the clothes and maybe a car or something, but you can tell that it's kind of Hollywood made. With this movie, I think they did a really good job of getting us that aesthetic that we're in 1978. when this movie takes place. And of course, I do like the suburban, small town Americana setting as well. So both the setting aspects really worked for me in this movie, and I think made it a lot more engaging for me than it otherwise would have been had it taken place in current times. Uh, Overall, I can say the movie is very well edited with great cinematography, really well shot. It's a superbly directed movie by Scott Derrickson, who's got a few really good movies now, in my opinion. But yeah, overall, in terms of the making of this movie, everything is really good from the score to the performances, which I'll get into more here in a minute, to the directing, the cinematography, as I said, and the editing as well. And they also do a cool thing where of course, this is the same director who directed Sinister, and Ethan Hawke was also in Sinister, so they have a little bit of a history together. And I really like Sinister. If you follow my channel, I think it's really creepy. One of the more creepier post 2010s movies out there. But in this movie, they kind of do a thing where they give you some of that grainy quality as it has to do with dreams and um, premonitions. Where in that movie it was like the Super 8 tapes that Ethan Hawke's character watched. So it has a little bit of that aesthetic, a little bit of that sort of filmmaking that I really like. It gives it a realism and a creepiness. So I really like that as well. I think the movie has really good characterizations of our siblings here. Talking about Finney and Gwen. They do a really good job, like the first half hour of setting up these characters, kind of letting you know where they're at, what they're like, just their overall demeanor, what they have to deal with, as far as like a family, some bullying things going on, some school things. I think the movie does a really good job without spending too much time on it. Now, some people might argue that it takes about a half hour before the grabber really appears on film, but I don't mind that if they do a good job and execute a setup of characterizations and setting up the story or characters like they do in this movie. So I thought they did a really good job with that. And then I definitely got to give a shout out to the two young actresses here that play the siblings. I thought they were both really well performed. Mason Thames has a lot to do here in terms of the bullying he goes through initially in school, and then obviously being kidnapped and having to try to escape the grabber here in this basement that he's stuck in. I thought he does a really good job, and Madeline McGraw as Gwen also. Um, she's a very sassy, like I think she's like a 12 or 13-year-old in this movie, something like that, and she's got a lot of sass to her. She tells the cops off, drops some f bombs on them. She even tells Jesus what the fuck a couple of times. So she's kind of she does well with the drama aspects of the movie as well as the sort of the comedy or the sassy, funnier parts of the movie as well. There's not a lot of them, but when they're there, so those two, I thought performed the characters very well. And then of course you got to talk about Ethan Hawke as well as the grabber. He does a really good job here, even though I would have liked a little bit more from his character. But as far as what he's given, his look, his movements, his dialogue, it's very creepy. Very, he just does a really good job making you uneasy. He kind of plays it like that. Um, he offers food and stuff. He offers breakfast to Finney in the basement, and Finney asks, "What'd you put in it?" And he said, "Salt and pepper." But the way he says it, there's something not right there. He just that very creepy way about him that definitely makes you uneasy. So Ethan Hawke, I like him as an actor, and I think he does a really good job here. Definitely a different kind of role for him than I've seen. Um, Oh, okay. I already talked about this, but I had a note well shot. I especially like the dreams and premonitions with the grainy quality. I already touched on that with the overall making of the movie. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers my pros for the Black Phone. There's a lot to like here, especially from a movie making standpoint. Now let's talk about the things that didn't work for me as much, that apparently worked for a lot of other people. First of all, I feel like this movie, it's rated R. But I feel like it's more of a psychological thriller slash character study than it is a horror movie. Now, don't get me wrong. Uh, kidnapping and grabbing, whatever you want to say, is horrifying, especially for those involved. Not only the person taken, but obviously the family and friends of that person. So I'm not trying to poo poo that or say it isn't a scary situation. But I just mean in terms of this movie, visceral horror on screen, I get much more thriller vibes from this. And that's not necessarily a negative. I'm just saying that that's something that this is Brian's horror movies for life. So I have to look at everything in a horror context, and I don't think it holds up as a horror movie for me personally as well. They do describe it as a psychological horror movie. I would say for me, it's a psychological thriller movie, and a good one at that. Less good as a psychological horror movie or a straight up horror movie. I also think it's a really solid character study, particularly our main character of Finney. I think he has a really good character arc and transition here. But the movie just didn't drive home that visceral horror on screen moments or scares like Sinister does. Sinister is a horror movie through and through. And while that movie's not perfect, it has a few issues with it. Just watching it, it's what I call a look over my shoulder kind of movie, where this one I didn't look over my shoulder at all. With Sinister and other movies like The Ring, and there's the handful of other ones that kind of the way the movie is, it's the horror of it makes me look over my shoulder even when I know that I'm not in the movie. But that's just the feeling that it gives me. So this movie didn't do that. Again, it felt like I was watching more of a thriller movie about a kidnapper, and that's really what it is. Now there are horror elements to it, especially the supernatural elements that they put in that I'll get to in a little bit here. But I just wanted to start with that. That for me, I don't really view this as a horror movie. I view it as a thriller movie. The supernatural elements involved was kind of the horror elements of the deceased kids calling on the phone. That didn't really totally work for me, if I'm being honest about it. The delivery of the lines by some of the kids was the biggest problem with it. I just didn't buy what they were selling. It was overplayed. It was overdone. Even in some of the flashbacks, like the one sort of badass kid that's playing pinball initially, and he confronts some other kids in a drugstore or a convenience store or something. It's a flashback. He's one of the kids that have been kidnapped and is apparently deceased now. But I just didn't. It was so over the top and not well. As good as the acting is among our main characters, some of the side characters, especially the younger, other high school kids, was not all that good, especially the delivery of the dialogue through the phone, which was obviously a big deal. I just thought it was rough. I just didn't totally buy the supernatural aspect. I mean, I get it. The phone's unplugged and the calls are happening from a supernatural aspect, and it helps Finney get his clues to ultimately escape the way he does at the end. But I don't know. It didn't completely work for me. That's the bottom line. I wanted a bit more from the grabber as far as being more intimidating and scarier. Again, I think it goes back into the fact that this is more of a thriller and less of a horror movie for me. He is very creepy, don't get me wrong. And the masks that he wears, different masks. He's got the one mask that you see on the front cover here, which I think is fairly effective. But it changes the mask. Sometimes it's just like the top part of it with the horns. Other parts it's just the smile, but then you see his regular Ethan Hawke's forehead and head. I thought that was very clever and interesting. So it's certainly not Ethan Hawke's issue. It's not the look issue. It's just like there are times I kind of wanted the grabber to just like be more intimidating. I think it would have made the movie scarier. But he's much more subdued in a creepy way, but a less horrific way. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody out there. I don't really know how else to describe it, but I just wanted a bit more from him. The movie does set up a lot of different things that aren't really explained, and as a result, a lot of them aren't paid off. Like his brother living in the same house as him and then having his big come to Jesus moment at the end when it's convenient. You know, how Gwen and her mom have these psychic abilities, these dream abilities. I don't know, man. I mean, I get it. They need it to make the plot go, but I wish they would have spent a little bit more time on it, a little bit more. I could have used a little bit more explanation. And then my final con, and this is kind of a nitpicky one, is how easy it was for the grabber to grab these kids. I'm basically talking about Finney when he gets grabbed here. He has these black balloons in the back of this van, which is cool. But he's like, if you're Finney, you live in this town, and all these kids have been grabbed, and yet you have this stranger that's wearing a top hat and kind of creepy looking to begin with. That wants to show you a magic trick, and you're all into it. I'd be running the other way. I mean, during this time, especially, it'd be one thing if you were the first kid grabbed by this guy, but there's been a history of like 4 or 5 other kids that are missing, and you're totally into this guy just pulling over on the side of the road and asking if you want to see a magic trick. Again, plot contrivances didn't completely work for me. So this is kind of a hard movie to rate because I don't love it as much as a lot of other reviews and people talk about, but I definitely don't dislike it. As a horror movie, I think it's a 6 out of 10. As a psychological thriller character study, which I think it more of what it is, it's an 8 out of 10. So you can probably kind of guess where I'm going with this. Um, this is a horror movie channel, so I do have to downgrade it a little bit. However, I was going to go 7 out of 10. I'm going to go 7.5 out of 10 because upon sleeping on it, I really think the performances by the 2 kids, the siblings, and they also have really good chemistry. I didn't mention that either, but they do feel like siblings, and they kind of have to bond together because of what they're dealing with at school and at home. So I did buy that. I thought both Madeline McGraw and shit, I already forgot his name. Mason Thames are really good when it comes to that. Really good chemistry. I really bought the siblings there. Um, but again, I'm going to give the movie a 7.5 out of 10. 7.5 out of 10 is the best I can go for the Black Phone from 2021. If you want to push back in the comments, you can. If you're somebody that loves this movie and think it is horror and think it's more of an 8 or a 9 out of 10, that's fine. I'm willing to listen. Just be respectful if you can be. But for me, it's a 7.5 out of 10 because I don't view it as a horror movie, but as a psychological thriller, it's definitely better than it's not. And so 7.5 out of 10 overall for the Black Phone. Go ahead and comment down below your guys' thoughts. As I said, if you have pushback on this or not, I'd love to hear it. Please like this video, hit the little notification bell, and subscribe to my channel. If you haven't already, it would really help me out for the future content and my channel going forward. With all that being said, I hope you're enjoying this trip down modern horror lane here as I do modern horror movie reviews. Still got about 10 or 11 to hit up yet the rest of March. So with that being said, thank you for watching, and as always, stay scared.